Hey guys, just a quick one on Cleveland's and on a legend that pushed and powered them to a new meaning, especially one slotted between the rails of a very special Pinto drag car. That's right, I'm talking about the late Bob Glidden. Bob Glidden would be forever known, if anything, the first to have used and pushed the almighty Ford 351 Cleveland 4V to its limits, even in today's standards or comparisons, I reckon. If we wind back a little to the mid-60s, Glidden was already a self-taught mechanic, naturally working at Ed Martin Ford in Indianapolis, Indiana, and had just got into the drag racing scene with racing a 427 powered Ford Fairlane, competing both in stock and super stock classes. Already having some wins under his belt, he stepped up to a 428 powered Cobra Jet Mustang, and by the end of the 60s, Glidden was already known by his competing rivals that he was the guy to try and beat in the NHRA Superstock classes. Okay, so moving forward to around 72, it was around then Glidden took things more seriously at a competing and professional level, purchasing a new Ford Pinto Pro Stock drag car from Wayne Gap and Jack Roush, who are also badass and Ford frontmen of that time in their own right. The Pinto drag car was a quality built car of its time, lightweight, chrome moly tube frame, rigid, perfect for that 650 plus horsepower Cleveland. However, Glidden at the 72 Super Nationals had already and quickly become runner-up to the well-known Bill Jenkins. So already a great start debut with his Cleveland-powered Pinto. Going harder in 73, Glidden takes out his first national win. That Cleveland must have just been run in, I reckon. Success again in 74, 3 national event wins and setting record ETs at both 883 and then 881, and also record speeds of close to 155 mile per hour. Finishing again with the NHRA Pro Stock Championship and first in point score for the season. 75 was the same pretty much, spinning up that Cleveland to 8,000 plus RPMs with 7 wins and also winning his second Pro Stock Championship. 76, Glidden finished up the season 6th in points, but he did take out earlier the February Winter Nationals win. In 77, he did a better return with 4 national event wins and runner-up in the championship to Dino Don Nicholson. And in 78, he was back first again and back on top. And on this went, a continuing pattern of wins, close calls and successes. But now, let's have a look at this badass power plant doing all that hard work along the way. The 351 Cleveland 4V. Glidden was no doubt a mastermind, an innovator, working away his magic, re-altering the Cleveland and constantly modifying, testing each thing he applied, not just on the dyno, but on the track also where it counts. Glidden has tinkered every bit of the Cleveland, from figuring out how the large port 4Vs can be extensively modified to flow and work better and make more horsepower. He most likely started off with a full ported set, figuring out its flaws via testing, which ultimately led to its high port exhaust plates. Then the field intake ports, modified and reshaped chambers, etc. You can also see from some of the pics I have up the highly modified tunnel ram intake manifold to suit, which has filled and tapered runners internally to suit the now filled intake ports. Hacked and modified plenum with huge amounts of welding to fill in voids and then blend and grind smooth transitions inside of that. Glidden has also known to have tried and modified different crank and rod combinations, utilising alloy rods, etc., to find to find his sweet spot, which these Clevelands demand. Also, to have been one of the first to have figured out and rectified the Cleveland's oil system, along with Bud Moore, I'd say, especially with them 8 to 9,000 plus RPMs these Clevelands see, and Cleveland's, at the end of the day, they aren't a mains priority system feed. They feed the cam and lifters first, then share it with the main and rod bearings. So, limiting flow to the cam and lifters and diverting more of that oil flow to the mains and, rod journals where it's needed is key on a high revving Cleveland to help it, keep it alive, both in drag racing and in NASCAR. So I believe intentionally or unintentionally these remarkable, proven and revised modifications have then come out and led to the larger performance brands to produce and market some of these discoveries to ordinary and everyday racers and profit from it. So, just like an example, the oil restrictor kit, that's being sold. And even the heads themselves, if the extensive modified and remodeled 4V iron head, so the exhaust high port round blended plates, welded chambers and reshaped to the now so popular shapes and contours we have. Glidden was doing this back then, definitely ahead of his time. So all this leading up to the Ford, pretty much all these mods were leading up to the Ford Motorsport A3 head, which pretty much carries all these mods in one unit. So, go figure. I mean, after all, it doesn't surprise me. Glidden was sponsored by Factory Ford throughout the 70s on and off. Another collaboration Glidden had was with Hooker Headers. Glidden will get them to make, certain design sizes, and they both, at the end of the day, learn from it. So that was amazing itself. There's a lot of vintage ex-Pro Stock Cleveland parts floating around nowadays from certain teams from back then, possibly even from Glidden himself. But pay attention to some of the pics I've attached and his response to some of the certain questions about, parts, modifications, etc. So I've also attached a pic of Glidden's Pinto that went up for sale and sold for $220,000 US. And that apparently had one of his only and true Glidden-built Cleveland 650 horsepower motors, to go with an ex-car of his. So that's just awesome, whoever the lucky owner is, he would be loving it. But yeah, look, there you go, guys. Just a little insight on the Bob Glidden early Pinto days and the early 351 Cleveland 4V days that he absolutely annihilated the competition with. And, a 26-year career in professional drag racing, 85 NHRA wins, 10 NHRA championships, 5 of which were consecutive wins from 85 to 89. And, come on, that's just badass. And I'm just super glad and pumped that every bit of a decade of that was done in Cleveland. Thanks, guys.